But one major heavyweight who is always close to most boxing pundits' lips, but isn't on the show on Saturday night, although I'm sure he'll be at ringside, is Anthony Joshua, former two-time world heavyweight champion, unified world heavyweight champion, of course. And he's lining up his own date with destiny for September at Wembley with the involvement of Turki Al-Sheikh, of course. And it's been kind of... Eddie Hearn gave a 6-person shortlist for AJ's opponent, but it seems almost certain now, from what we've heard from various sources, that Joshua is most likely to take on the winner of the Daniel Dubois fight with Filip Hrgovic. And as you've seen, if you watch the predictions just now, I've gone for Hrgovic, Eamon's gone for Dubois, Anthony Joshua waiting in the wings. Obviously, commercially, much bigger fight against Dubois if it's taking place at Wembley, as we suspect. But Hergovich, I think, and Billy Nelson said this last night, would actually be a really tough test for AJ because of his style and the fact that he probably wouldn't be intimidated either. Eamon, do you think there's one of those two guys that suits Anthony Joshua better?
I think either of them end up being on the less favoured side against Anthony Joshua. Dubois for experience, although Dubois might draw from... I think Dubois was one of those people who, when he was turning pro, one of his big claims was he got the top side of... he had the top side of Anthony Joshua in a spar in the back, but Dubois obviously since come on a long way since that. But yeah, look, you'd want to see a UK versus UK type of thing going on if it was to be at Wembley. Filip Hrgovic doesn't, of course, being Croatian, doesn't represent that there, but it's all on apparent, who deserves it. That's kind of been the mantra over in Saudi of putting those big fights and putting even losing fighters, getting them more active and giving them those opportunities. But you'd much rather see Daniel Dubois in there than you would see Filip Hrgovic. But he's got to come through Filip Hrgovic. Where does Wilder fit in that equation as well too? Not so sure, because Wilder was seemingly in there as well if he comes through Zhilei Zhang. And Zhang as well, that's been a much mooted fight as well too. They were supposed to maybe do a fight over in China in the Bird's Nest. But that, it seems like that part of the equation has fallen to the wayside, especially with some other shortlisted fighters for Wilder to fight in the form of Jared Anderson being a fight that's been penciled in by Turki Al-Sheikh, who wants to see that fight happen as well. So it's all a little bit up in the air, but I don't think Anthony Joshua would find himself any more concerned for any of the fighters in the mix really right now on current form. Really depends what happens in their fight specifically. Maybe Wilder the most, because there's always been that rivalry and bit of back and forth, but we've seen them beat, barring Filip Hrgovic, although myself would attest to that. I think I have seen him beat against Zhilei Zhang. So none of these right now stand to be of a major concern for Anthony Joshua for that Wembley date, but you'd much rather see a Dubois or a Wilder in there.
Philly says the only fight I want to see after Fury and Usyk is Fury versus AJ, Battle of Britain. Tech Test says AJ is such a huge star that he can fight Postman Pat and he will still fill out Wembley Stadium. Pat for the KO. Dubois is not on AJ's level at all. Joshua will put him to sleep. Well, he's got to get past Hergovich first. So if you don't think he's on much of a level, then he might not manage that. Carl Frosch has accepted to fight John the Headbutter Fury, says Philly. Oh, Philly, you were doing so well with your first post. Difficult second album syndrome there. Dash Chef Anthony says Wilder to win and then Wilder Parker too. Yeah, I mean, I feel a bit sorry for Joseph Parker because he's beaten two of the biggest danger men in the division, and then people are still talking about him fighting the likes of Wilder again or Caballel. And surely Parker's at a stage now where he deserves some sort of title shot. You got guys like Dubois and Hergovich battling to either retain or take that number one position with the IBF. You've got a WBA eliminator coming up as well. I was looking at last night. Things are starting to move in terms of getting people in position for after the Fury-Usyk rematch takes place. And you'd like to see Parker at the head of at least one of those queues. DB Cooper 1 says, let's not get carried away. AJ couldn't sell out the O2 Arena twice last year. Yeah, but I think that everyone expected AJ to clearly win those fights. I think, him against Dubois, he will be a big favourite, but not as big. And I think if Dubois is coming off a big win over Hergovich as well, it narrows that gap even more. So we shall see. Let's get on to our final talking point for this episode. It's already one of our longer editions, but we were gripped by an incredible rematch on Saturday night in Leeds as Jack Catterall beat Josh Taylor. Some will say again, but actually got the decision this time, although it seemed to me, at least, a much closer fight than the first one. Although I did have Catterall winning, but by a smaller margin than I felt he should have won the first fight. But either way, they both gave their all. They were both very respectful, both during and after the fight, a marked contrast to the build-up to both contests. And I know people talk about a trilogy. I'm not sure how keen Catterall is. His immediate post-fight comments, he said he's closed the chapter on Josh Taylor for now. But yeah, excellent fight. Eamon, what did you make of it?
Yeah, it was an excellent fight, a fight that delivered. I mean, I really enjoyed the drama of the first fight being there ringside, especially with how Catterall maybe wasn't as favoured going into the fight there. Taylor, for me, looked in good spirits. He looked like he'd done the weight as well as he could do, as the weight was a point of contention going into the first fight. He seemed like he'd done it right, talking to Joe McNally, coming out of camps and things, keeping himself at a good weight so he wasn't losing all the weight as well. And as well, factors of his foot injury and the minor surgery to his eye as well too didn't seem to curtail really Josh from getting the victory there. Those weren't used as excuses either from Josh, at least in any post-fight interviews and the interview he gave immediately after the fight to DAZN when it ended. So I think we saw probably the best form of Josh Taylor we're going to see. Is it the Josh Taylor of the past? No. But I also do think Josh Taylor of the past would have still struggled with Jack Catterall and his style. I just think it's a style that Josh can't quite get to grips with. I do feel he had successes in it. I feel it was the right type of game plan to not really fall as much into Jack's punches as he did the first time round, but he still pressed Jack where Jack had to back foot a lot more, and he looked like he was tired or more tired than he was the first fight. So I think they game planned it as well as they could do. It's just the case that Jack was just a much better sharp shooter, and when Taylor was able to get success, Jack was able to just respond more with flurries of punches and really hurt Josh Taylor at points, and really, which we've never really seen before against real good fighters. So I just think it's a sign of where Taylor is going and where Catterall is going too. The controversial point afterwards, we thought we might go through the fight without any controversy, and then Bob Arum snatches the mic and gives his thoughts on how he thought the fight went. And actually, putting that aside for a second, that's indicative of Jack Catterall and his style as well too, for all of how good it is, I believe it to be. It's very key now who he fights next and where he fights next, because the American fight fans and American judges might not have the same appreciation for his style. So therefore, his style might mean that he won't get the credit he deserves on any card that goes to points. So if you're looking for those world titles, you're looking for the likes of Teofimo Lopez, looking for the likes of Ismael Barroso. Barroso might be the easier fight to go for. But you've still got to win those fights, and you've got to push more and show another gear, which Catterall hasn't done so far. And that might mean that he won't get the success he's looking for in the ring, even though for some, including myself, he should have been crowned undisputed champion, and that's now slipped away from his grasp. He's now got Eddie Hearn's got to now make sure he manufactures a good path to getting a world title, and it has to happen here in the UK as well if he's going to get that success. So I thought it was a well-deserved win for Jack Catterall against Josh Taylor, who might consider retirement now, probably still has a fight or two left in him if he moves up to welterweight and maybe looks to not quite cash out, but get those last couple of paydays. And Jack Catterall has to make sure that he gets the fights that he wants here, but over here in the UK.